Hello, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Welcome, welcome, Kate Bouchard. I am so happy to have you, and I'm so happy that Jen Wint introduced us. So shout out to Jen Wint, awesome human being, who I was just messaging on Instagram today. So you can find her there because she lives there, like we all do. I want to introduce you to Kate because she is an incredible, multifaceted human being who essentially does entrepreneurship in every single pocket of the world. Kate has a background in advertising and communications and has worked with numerous healthcare organizations, including Doctors of BC, BC Family Doctors, and the Health Data Coalition, or DATA, if you are from somewhere else. She is the founder of Armature Collective, a marketing and branding company based in Vancouver. Kate believes strongly in giving back to arts and community services, yay, and supporting personal development. She has held numerous community leadership roles, organized charity events, and provides personal coaching to a select group of clients. And we are here today with you to talk about many things, including how you got to Loba, which you'll find out what that is. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you both.
Yay! So I want to jump straight in because we had a really great chat yesterday, and did the normal fast friends thing where I was like, oh, stars in my eyes, this person's incredible. Tell everyone else about yourself, how you grew up, and what got you onto this Loba journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born on Vancouver Island, but I grew up in Richmond, BC.
Fellow island girl.
Oh, really? I was born in Victoria.
I was born in Salt Spring.
Oh, Salt Spring. Oh, wow. I'm jealous. Did you grow up there?
No, I went back for summers and I went back to visit, but I grew up in Vancouver.
Oh, I love Salt Spring Island. Yeah, so my family moved over from Victoria when I was pretty young to Richmond. And I grew up in Richmond, BC, and then have lived in the Lower Mainland all of my life. I've been in Vancouver proper for probably about 5 or 6 years now. As you mentioned, I have a background in advertising and marketing. I have my degree, my BBA in business management and marketing. What else can I tell you?
And you're an actor. You're an actor as well.
I dabbled.
That's not true. Kate had one of the best agents in town. Like, that agency is an incredible agency. So
yeah,
dabbling
amazing,
is not.
amazing.
I think you're an actor.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm going with that story.
Film definitely has played a big role in my life, both just on like a personal interest level, but then also as someone who, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actress, like very, very badly, but I was debilitatingly nervous and high anxiety. And so as an adult, I went back to it kind of around the same time of all this entrepreneurship kind of exploration stuff happened too. And it definitely helped me get out of my shell a little bit and become more confident.
It does,
so
right?
It all kind of has played a role in leading me towards entrepreneurship. But yeah, I worked in corporations and companies from a young age. I was 19, working at a international helicopter company in administration and going to school, and I wound up at an ad agency. And I was there for a few years and then moved over to the marketing, the client side of things with Doctors of BC. And after some really great experiences there, leading the rebrand of that organization and a big web development project, I launched Armature Collective 4 years ago. So yeah.
Tell us about the collective quickly, because I love what we were talking just before we started about how you structured this.
Yeah. So throughout my career in marketing and advertising, I met so many amazing creatives and so many freelancers. And one thing that I really wanted to do with Armature was I want to support other freelancers and creatives. And so I lead a team of creative freelancers. So our structure is that everyone is self-employed. Everyone has their own business. And we found sort of like our core team and our tribe. And we bring the right people in for the right projects and the right clients, depending on who we're working with. So it's really nice because we get to support clients. We get to support creative freelancers in all of their, in all their goals.
I love how that happens during this gig-based economy where it's like, you know, and we were talking about this, Raquel and I speak about this a lot with Bombshells, is that we want everything we do to be generative. We want it to be a generative employment structure, if that's the right way of putting that. But what does it mean for you to lead these people? So are you providing them with a space? Are you providing them, like, is it all offline? Like, do you have big team meetings? Like, paint this picture for aspiring creative entrepreneurs and aspiring creative connectors, because it's great structure.
Yeah, it's really funny because when I launched 4 years ago, working from home was way less of a thing. Like to work virtually. And actually a lot of the clients from the beginning that we attracted had virtual teams as well. But it was not like the agency, like the traditional agency sort of was reigning supreme at the time. It's like you wanted a fancy boardroom to go to and like ping pong table and beer on tap and whatever, right? And that from day one, I said, is not us. Like that's not who we are. And as a part of that, our overhead is less. And so our pricing is a little bit more accessible for smaller businesses. So we structured it like that from the beginning. And it's been really interesting seeing with COVID, this shift to gig economy, the great resignation, as they say, people going, you know, changing jobs or going to freelance, wanting more flexibility, and that merging of like we couldn't avoid home and work together. So I feel like we were a bit ahead of the curve with that, and the gig economy was just kind of starting to be something that was discussed, you know, in more business media and publications and stuff. So it's interesting to have seen this change the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's so okay. So then take us through, you started this agency, and then what's the journey for Loba? Like that was a very personal thing that you have now melded into this beautiful product.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very personal thing. And it's been a long time coming. So in my late 20s, I went through a bit of a health exploration or health journey myself. And I decided to go off the hormonal birth control pill in my late 20s. And I'd been on it since I was, best thing I've ever done, but also hardest thing I've ever done, because I was on it like from my early teens. And so my body just went, like everything went awry. My skin broke out. I had horrible cystic acne. I never had that before. My cycles were like, you know, all over the place, sometimes months long. And I felt horrible. And,
how did you feel horrible? Sorry,
just like tired all the time. I felt really insecure about the way that I looked with my skin. My metabolism was off. I felt, you know, lethargic. Things were just, the system was off. My system was off, and I never really experienced like the natural cycles. And so I had very painful periods, and so I sought out both traditional medical care and then also started seeing a naturopath. And through this process, and this was a years-long process, we discovered that I had uterine fibroids and needed surgery for it, and had PCOS.
What's PCOS?
PCOS is, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's being talked about more often now, which is a really great thing. Same with uterine fibroids, are being spoken about. People are being a bit more open about it these last number of years. But polycystic ovarian syndrome is essentially where you have a number of cysts in your ovaries, but there's a bunch of symptoms that come along with it, like hormonal challenges. People have more body hair. Women have more body hair. They have challenges with weight. There's a whole list of symptoms.
I think it's painful too, right?
It can be very painful. Yeah. Uterine fibroids result in very painful periods and heavy bleeding, and are believed to impact fertility as well.
And these often go undiagnosed for a lifetime, right?
Very
because
long time,
what you'd said to me during our conversation yesterday was your pill was masking these.
Yeah, so the pill actually is sometimes prescribed to help with some of these symptoms. And so it can mask it. And so when I think back to my very like early pubescent years, when I first was in puberty, there were certain symptoms that I didn't realize at the time that likely were related to that. But because I didn't experience that for a long time before going on the pill, it's believed that it sort of masked those symptoms in me. Anyway, so I went through this journey figuring all this out, and I was seeing a physician, and I was seeing a naturopath, and I started taking a lot of supplements. And I was working in Vancouver and living in Surrey, commuting, 2 to 3 hours a day, very busy for corporate lifestyle. And I'm a type A organized person who also really cares about her surroundings and my space. Like, I believe that our homes have to be a place that are very comforting. I, curate things that I bring into my home, even into my office environment, like everywhere I go, energy of space is really important to me. And I wanted something that would help me organize all these supplements that I was taking like multiple times a day. And all I could find were the things that you think of when you think of a pill organizer, which are those ugly plastic, like huge letter labeled,
semi-transparent, and they're like orange or highlighter yellow.
Just horrible, right? And that's all I could find. And they were once daily mostly. And it just wasn't, there was nothing to meet my needs. And,
or they're not big enough either. You're like, oh, now I have not like a fun time.
Anyone who's seen a naturopath or does supplementation or takes, vitamins daily, like you take them sometimes multiple times a day or with meals, which you have more than once a day. And so I couldn't find anything to suit my needs. I still to this day have like the ugly, like you said, fluorescent highlighter version, because I'm now creating Loba to solve this problem, but I don't even have it yet. It's coming soon, very soon. Anyway, so I had this idea back then, and I sort of brainstormed around it. I did a few drawings, I talked to a few friends, but I never really did anything with it because I was launching Armature Collective and I was making that first leap into entrepreneurship from having worked in corporations for most of my career. So working on Armature for 4 years, you start to build a bit of a brand reputation, your client base, your team, things, were going really well. And I had sort of the space then to start thinking about this. And I just, it had been more than 5 years since I had that original idea in my late 20s, and I still couldn't shake it. So the last number of years, I decided to do something about it. And we created Loba,
which is a pill organizer. And can you explain it? So it's beautiful. It's aesthetically pleasing.
Yes.
It's got, is it bamboo top? I don't even know.
Yeah, there's two colors, right? As well.
Yeah, so there's 2 colors, but it's wrapped in real wood. It's a white birch that's around the outside.
Beautiful.
So, so it's really and it's interesting because it's kind of like the culmination, if you will, of like all of my interests and experience that have come together with Loba. But it is the first smart Wi-Fi connected pill organizer that also looks beautiful in your space, and that is functionally, the design is functioned to meet your needs. So within the unit, it's a countertop unit that you keep at home. Within the unit, there's daily compartments for each day of the week that are removable, that you can take with you on the go. So if you're going to the office, or if you're going away for the weekend, you can take a couple of these daily compartments that pop out. But it's connected to tech via Wi-Fi and to our mobile app. So there's a Loba app that you download to set daily reminders, to customize the color of the LEDs, because Loba lights up, it glows when it's time to take your pills.
So
and to
cute.
And to track your daily habits. And so I really wanted to take pill organization, so weekly organizing, and then also daily consumption of your supplements. I wanted to make it a pleasure instead of a chore. And I wanted to tap into the feeling of those cherished daily rituals that we all have. And a lot of the inspiration came from just my morning ritual routine. And, I love lighting my incense, or my turning on my aromatherapy diffuser, having my coffee in the morning. I wanted to create that feeling in a product so that it looks good, it feels good while you're doing something that makes your body healthy.
I love that, because here's the thing is, oftentimes when you're taking supplements or medications, it's because you're trying to fix a problem. And then you have these giant bottles of ugly pills, and you now have to like take those. Or if you were like me, I'd like find these little boxes, but then they're in your purse and they're like shaking.
Yeah.
Stuff. Or you're forgetting them, whatever. But then it's not actually making you feel good, because I think half the battle is like I always talk about just trying to lower that stress, lower that cortisol. So now you have this moment where it doesn't feel like you're trying to fix a problem. It feels like part of your routine. It feels like something pretty. It feels like something you can do, and it's not triggering that fix for the problem, and you're not like, your brain's not going back to the problem all the time. I think it makes a really huge difference.
I was saying yesterday that it makes you feel beautiful.
I'm gonna have to like trademark that and steal that.
Yeah,
No,
totally.
it's so true, and especially as someone who's struggled with things related to essentially fertility, and thinking like something's wrong with me, and what's wrong with me that I am having these struggles. Like the last thing you want is your supplementation organization or the way that you take them to feel like a problem. If we can change that mentality to I'm taking care of myself versus, like you said, fixing a problem, there's so much I think like mental strength in that. And it makes you feel better about what you're doing for your body versus trying to fix something that's wrong.
I think it's really interesting that you, just coming from that marketing background, I always think about like our listeners and watchers of the show, and like, so how many people are so creative, and we're all at the beginning of, or in the middle of figuring out how to transfer all of our skills in what we do and in who we are. So like externally and internally. And one thing that I love, having gone through your website a few times now, is that you're really not breaking the flow of fabulous. It's like your concept was from start to finish to be like, this is who I am. You describe yourself as like, type A, organized. And it seemed like the problem was a very feminine energy problem of like, I've set myself up for this day. I'm doing this thing. I love to be fabulous. I've created this way of living that is fabulous and is aesthetically pleasing and organized. And the pills traditionally, in those traditional ugly plastic, like single use almost boxes, are just rupturing your inner flow. Like your chi.
I love that perspective.
Like it's a chi rupture, right? And so Raquel and I talk about this a lot. We were talking about this recently about how much energy it takes to shift from tasks and task to task. So now if you're presented with this pill box that is in line with your core values and everything you do, your decision making process, as well as your internal chi, is not being ruptured, which is saving you. It's actually saving you time, energy. And like Raquel says, like, it's not spiking any cortisol or getting you to feel stressed about something or shift.
I love that so much. And it's really reducing the mental load of managing your pills. And even like, if in some of the products out there, don't even have like days on them, or you don't remember if you took them, or if you're just using the pills, it's like, wait, did I take my pills today? Or like, what time was that supposed to be? One thing I wanted to mention is that you said the interruption of your daily flow. Like, there are pill organizing apps out there that just do that send you reminders, or people are like, oh, I just set an alarm on my phone or whatever. I don't know about you, but I have so many notifications and pop-ups on my phone all the time that like I can't turn them off because of work or because of keeping in touch with a loved one or whatever. And there's so much noise now on our phones. And so when I was creating Loba, I wanted the app and the connection, and so you can like track daily habits and kind of gamify and make it fun, and look back at your week and be like, wow, I did really well this week. I took all of my supplements, and connect into that what we know works for habit building and healthy habit building. But a phone notification sometimes for me doesn't do it. And so building LEDs into Loba, it glows underneath, like on the underside of the base, and then also in the front, because we know the power of visual cues is so strong, and it takes your mind processes it so much faster, and it takes less mental load for visual cue. That's why they say, like, if you want to read, if part of your goal is to read a book, like read every night before bed, you put the book on your bed in the morning so that when you come to bed, you see it right there on your pillow so that you'll do it. Right? Like there's power in that. And so having Loba glow, when you're, walking into the house or walking from room to room, you see the glow in the corner of your eye, and you know that you haven't taken your pills yet. And as soon as you take the lid off Loba, there's sensors in it so that it knows that once you've taken the lid off the main unit, that you've taken your pills, and it logs it for you. And you can either do it that way, or you can log it in app. So it works for both, those types of people. Some people might prefer the notifications. For me, I find it a bit noisy, or, the visual cue of walking by. You have both of those options.
Your goal priming.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And we just had an episode that we recorded this morning. I don't know when it's going to come out in terms of the cues of what goes wherever, because that's Christina's world. But anyways, there is another episode that we have recorded. And that's one of the things that we were talking about is how your brain processes things. So you've got your automatic processing where you don't have to think about things and you just have this habitual stuff that keeps happening. And then you have your system 2 processing where you're really pre-thinking about things. It takes a lot more load basically for your brain to go through that, and that's when you're doing all the preparatory work and all of the planning and all of that. So if you're goal priming, then basically what you're doing is you're making it so that when you're in that mode where you're tired or distracted or whatever, you're pre-doing that work. You're taking the load off so that you will just automatically go into that action. And I love that idea about the lights. So how much research did it take? Like, obviously you had this idea for a number of years, but I'm assuming you kind of tabled it and then came back to it later, or did you trickle on? Yeah. Okay. So
yeah. And I found that, all those years later, there still wasn't a product in the market that suited my needs. And the first step was like, okay, do other people have this problem too?
Yeah.
Like, is it just me? And what I found very quickly is that it's not just me. I did discovery interviews with a number of different naturopaths. We did like surveys of people who take supplements. And actually one thing that really stuck in my mind was in discussion with one naturopath who I was interviewing about, whether a product like this would be helpful, whether their patients ask for recommendations for pill organizers, that kind of thing. She said to me that she had this patient who came into her, for an appointment, and very well dressed, like put together woman. She walks into her appointment and she pulls out of her bag, like her designer purse, a Ziploc bag of supplements, and is like, is there a better way for me to organize this? Like, this is all that I can figure out that'll work for me, like, because I've taken them so frequently. So she did like the almost like meal planning, which is sort of a part of what you're just talking about, Raquel. She would, in the beginning of the week, like organize all of her Ziploc bags of pills. And she pulls it out of this designer purse, and she's like beautifully dressed and obviously cares about her aesthetics and her appearance and her surroundings. And I'm like, someone like that needs a Loba. And I heard stories like that over and over again from naturopaths. And actually, one thing I'm really proud of is that early on we established a wellness advisory panel. So I really wanted to. I'm not a naturopath. I'm not a physician. I know what has worked for me in my experience, but I can't provide, that medical advice, obviously. So I really wanted to bring on some professionals who know what they're talking about, who we could sort of tap into around trends around health and wellness, what they're seeing, in their clinics. So we have 2 naturopaths and 1 medical doctor, 1 MD, who is very sort of like integrative minded on our panel. And they've been really supportive from day one, and very useful for us in sort of picking their brains about all the trends and what their patients experience and what they see and how they think that something like this could help. So yeah, we've done lots of research and continue to do that research and working with those partners.
We've got to introduce you to Ashley Margison.
Oh, who's that?
Hormone specialist.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
She is next level. Yeah, I love it. I love that.
Okay, but wait, I want to go back.
Yes.
I want to go back to the research. So, and I want to go back to how you built. This is my world.
Oh, we can get into it. We can talk about PCBs and supply chains and injection molding.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so for research,
yes.
First of all, I have 2 things. I'm going to start with your advisory panel.
Yeah.
We have so many people who follow the podcast and who we know and that are very entrepreneurial, who have different ideas, who are working on different projects. I love, love, love that you created an advisory panel. So for someone who has an idea for a business but may have no clue what their next step is, how did you do that? How did you find them? How did you invite them to be part of this panel? How often do they meet? How do they talk to you? Like, bring us through that whole slew of things, because I don't even think we've ever talked on the podcast about this.
Yeah, sure.
We haven't.
I found them, let's see. So the advisor panel is two naturopaths. Dr. Bobby Parmar owns Mint Integrative. He's one of the founders of Mint Integrative in Vancouver. I found him because I was sitting in on a panel discussion that one of my clients, who's a physician, was leading. And he was the naturopath that they brought in. So they brought in an MD and a naturopath to talk about women's hormones during the pandemic. And he was on it. And I just thought he was amazing. And so I reached out and asked him if he'd meet with me and chat with me about it. And then I had a call with him and I asked him. The second naturopath, Dr. Sam Bowen, I found, I think, through Instagram, believe it or not. And I just really liked her. She's newer to practice. Actually, I think Bobby was one of her instructors in school, one of her teachers. And we just had an initial Zoom call and really connected. And I absolutely love her. She's amazing. She's very focused on fertility and hormone health as well. And she agreed to be part of it. And then the third, Dr. Jenna Creaser, is an MD. And I was introduced to her through a group of female physicians that I know through some of the clients that I worked with in the past. So really, I mean,
is Dr. Creaser Rising Rose Wellness?
Yes, she is. Okay. Yeah. She's like a certified hypnotherapist. She is a yoga instructor. She's amazing. Yeah, check out her website, her Instagram. She's great. And really, so I guess my advice around that is you have to put yourself out there. You have to be prepared to ask people, if you're setting a wellness advisory panel, like ask people if they know anyone who they think would be interested in participating. Be prepared for some no's and don't take it personally. I mean, it is a bit of a time commitment. We're just meeting once a quarter, but each of our wellness advisors have contributed like blogs to our website, and they're there with questions if I reach out.
Okay, I want to dig a little bit deeper on that. I want to know, my organized type A personality wants to know, when you do that, when you approach people, because I'm really big on the career pathway side of things, and people making those asks with enough background and with a presentation of this is what is being required of you. So did you at this point know exactly what Loba was going to be, or close enough that you could present? And did you do like a 1-page pitch? Did you do, here's what how did you literally paint me the picture of what you presented to them and how you made the ask? Because obviously there must have been an exchange. They must have looked at it and gone, this is something that I know we need, and that we find value in providing our expertise and time. How did you, what were the, essentially the paper products and the pitch elements that you gave to them? Because I think that's one of the biggest kind of steps that people can falter on, is not knowing what to present to someone when they're making an ask.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to remember the specifics of the timeline. It's a little bit fuzzy. I know that it started with an email and just like a quick little pitch about what I was doing. Loba, I mean, it was fully conceived and designed. Like I didn't go to them with just, hey, I'm thinking about this thing, it was fully conceived and designed, but at the point still where they could provide input. It wasn't too late to make changes. So I reached out with an email. They hopped on Zoom calls with me. I believe that we had an initial website up with some of our like 3D renderings and some branding and some graphics so that they could see that we were like a legit business.
Yeah.
When I knew someone, I explained how I knew them or how I was introduced to them, so that there was that personal connection. Yeah. And then on the calls, really it was just connecting with them on a personal level, telling my story, sharing about Loba and the product and what we're trying to do. And then I did follow up with, I did make sort of a casual ask on the first initial calls. And then I did follow up with a 1-pager, all about the 1-pagers, just outlining what would be required of them and what the structure of the wellness advisory panel would look like. And then they just sort of confirmed that they would be part of it.
And when you did that, did you look at what they did and kind of pitch directly, this is why I think you're a really good fit? And because I'm just wondering, like, whenever I'm asked, and I'm asked often to be on boards and panels, people are like, we want you because we think you'll be really passionate about it. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's great. But the people who end up getting me are the ones who say, we want you because I've seen that you were posting about this, and this is how we do that. And I've seen you talking about this thing, and we think that your skills will be so valuable in us moving this step forward in our thing, and we can mutually benefit each other.
Yeah, I definitely expressed that in the initial calls that I had with them.
Okay.
Just saying, and honestly, asking their opinion.
Yeah.
Like what do you think of this, and is this something that you would be interested in?
Yeah.
And just them being honest about, and they all said yes. They all said absolutely, like we see the use of this for our patients, and this is needed, this doesn't exist, I can't wait to get one for myself. And so it was this real connection about the problem that they saw, and that Loba could be a solution that they wanted to be a part of.
Yeah,
I love that. Okay, now going to the research.
Yes.
Because you have the research for the product. Like I can tell right off the bat that you've gone into healthy habit building, you've like dug into the research there. I want to know about that, at what stage you started digging into that. And then I want to know about everything else, because manufacturing is a beast. It is a beast. It is such a beast, and you're doing it during a pandemic.
I know. I don't know.
And even, and shipments are crazy right now. Like literally, I don't know if you know this, Christina, or people listening, but getting supplies is crazy.
The supply
right
chain
now
has been a mess since the beginning of COVID. And I chose to make a product that also requires chips that the auto manufacturing industry uses, which was like the stupidest idea, because they are, you have to have a bit of a screw loose, I think, to get into the hardware development. Like entrepreneurship, we all have to be a little bit crazy, and it's like my kind of crazy, right? Okay. So the research that I did, just the beginning of your question, the research that I did around, is this product needed? How do people use it? Like I did research and building a business plan around, the supplementation market and how much people spend in Canada and the US on supplements and vitamins and that kind of stuff. So I did all that stuff very early on, like before I paid anybody to help me with any designs, or
did
before
you
I
use
invested
a
a lot of money.
service? Like for especially for the surveys and stuff, because I know
I did them all myself.
Wow, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. And then just read reports, like any reports that were existing. The challenge with Loba is that there isn't, and also the benefit is there isn't really anything like it. And so there's a few competitive products, but they're a lot more like pharmaceutically inclined, or like compliance driven. So targeted towards usually seniors who are taking like polypharmacy, you're taking a lot of medications at once, and their caregivers, children, want to help them with organization and compliance. There's not a lot of competitors, and there's none that I have found that look beautiful as well, like had that sort of interior decor design aspect. So I had to research like industries and marketplaces that were associated, so like supplement sales, naturopathy, that kind of stuff. So I did all that very early before I invested money in Loba. The manufacturing, it's been a huge learning curve for me, but I have, I think, hired very well. I'm working with a product design development firm based out of Burnaby that I hired, and I also worked with my friend Nicole, who's a furniture designer, a product designer at Article.
Smart.
Very early, and also hired an engineer to help me write the RFQ to hire the product design development firm.
What's RFQ?
Request for quote.
Oh, okay.
So I had like experts helping me with the language, like speaking the language of like electrical design. And so I invested in that early on. And so Nicole helped me with taking my horrible sketches. I'm a very creative person, and like drawing is not one of them. I'm much more abstract. So she took my sketches, and I worked with her to get some initial like product wireframe and 3D renderings done. And then I worked with an engineer to help me articulate the functionality that I wanted. We wrote an RFQ. We sent it to a few different firms, and then ended up hiring Iconic Design to help us with product design development. So hiring right is of huge importance when it's not your skill set. Like I'm never going to be an electrical designer, or an engineer or an industrial designer. It doesn't make sense for the founder who, you know, has expertise in business and marketing and design to try to learn how to do that, or be like coding the app myself. I hire for my gaps. And that was obviously the biggest gaping hole in my experience in starting Loba.
That is so good. I just have to jump in there because
highlight, underline.
Yeah, no. This is important, and the reason I want to highlight it is because we've had a lot of guests on in the past who were really, really great because they were in different industries, but for example, who trained in things that they knew, okay, I'm never going to be an expert in this, but I can speak this language. So the same type of idea. They're like, okay, now because I've trained in sound engineering, I can talk to a sound engineer and tell them how I want them to master my music, for example. We have not had someone on who came on and hired to even create the quote. Like, that is so genius. And I think I really want to highlight that because you are perfectly right in the sense that you have stepped so far out of your wheelhouse that it does not make sense for you to learn a trade like that. So you can hire for that, especially if it's someone that you trust.
Okay. I love that. I have no idea. How do people get the money to do that? That is the eternal question, right? Like,
yeah, we can talk about funding if you'd like as well. I
would love to do that.
So I had Nicole as a friend of mine, trained as an architect. I mentioned product designer, furniture designer at Article. She charged me a very reasonable, you know, very friend rate, and probably didn't track all of her hours to just help me get to that point where I could say, like, this is what I want to, this is my idea, this is what I want to create.
Yeah.
Actually, I started, I need to go back to it and refresh it, but I started kind of like a mind map of every touch point, everyone who's introduced me to everyone else, because I spoke to probably hundreds of people.
Raquel is like,
I need to go back to it because I'm trying to sort of like keep an archive of all of these things. But so the engineer that I worked with to help me with the RFQ, he was referred to me by a product design firm who didn't think they were the right fit for me. And they were referred to me. I had this like one sheet that was given to me by a local electrical manufacturing company who I was referred to from a plastic injection mold company that I was speaking to early on. So I found this engineer to help me, and he just charged me like an hourly rate freelance to help me write it and articulate it in language that would someone would be able to quote on.
So yeah, and this is what I love. I love that you have this tree of people that you've like grown, because it also it demonstrates how highly relational you are, right? In terms of gratitude as well, and making sure that you're tracking who's helping you in what ways. One of the big things that I find is a lot of the people that we have listening and a lot of the feedback we get is all of these people have what we call corner of our desk jobs, right? Where they're just like, it's like, I know this is great. What the difference is, what I want to highlight is how much you researched to make sure that you were solving a problem that was going to bring a very specific focused return on your investment because of the product that you're creating. So it gives you that focus to kind of move forward and say, look, I know this is going to be great. And I think the next phase for me is sort of looking at it and going, okay, well, how much money do you need to be able to put yourself into that next phase? And then if you cannot afford it money-wise, what's another exchange of value you can offer to a person, right? So you got friend discounts, which was great. You have that kind of community of people that you've built up for that. You probably had either savings, or I don't know, some people go straight for investment and they will...
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm very happy to share that. So I definitely had a bit of savings that I put towards sort of like the early, I would call it like exploratory, I would call the RFQ and working with some of these, you know, people sort of on contract and freelance. I call that sort of the exploratory phase. So that I was able to just finance on my own. Once I got the RFQ and decided to move forward, it was a huge investment, a huge chunk of change that was needed to actually design the product, and then another huge chunk of change to manufacture it, which we can talk about. So I actually refinanced my apartment. Went to the bank.
Bold move, my friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was some comfort in it for me, and that I built up equity in my apartment over a period of time, and was able to go to the bank and get a new mortgage, get this big check. And actually, I sent a picture of the check the day that I got it to my partner, and I said, like, okay, this is am I doing this? Like, this is a huge bet. And I did it. And as you're going through this process, there's always there's a risk risk benefit analysis. I always do. I go to the place, okay, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find comfort in that from a business perspective. So the worst that could happen is that this doesn't work out. This is a horrible idea, and I sell my apartment, and I lost that amount of money. I'm like, my day-to-day is the same. Armature Collective is great. So I was like, okay, understand what's worst that could happen. That's a risk I'm willing to take. So I did it. The next thing that I started doing was developing some pitch documentation. I developed a pitch deck. And once I had an understanding of the actual cost to manufacture, which you have to have the design to be able to start getting quotes for manufacturing, I developed cash flows for the first, projected cash flows for the first 3 years, looked at the kind of cash that we would need to get the product into customers' hands. And I started sharing with people that I was looking for investors. I didn't really do much pitching. I shared with a few people in my network that I was looking and sent them the pitch deck so that they could send it to anyone that they thought might be interested. And I actually had 2 of those people ask me if they could invest. So I had 2 angel investors come on early, who are just they're my true angels. They're wonderful women who really believe in me and the product and what the brand stands for, what we as a company want to create. We want to create more than we're not just selling pill organizers, right? We want to contribute and make a difference in people's lives and communities. And so they came on, and that was a huge learning. That was all about different types, your cap table and different types of shares, and working with lawyers and my accountant to make sure that we structured everything properly, and early shareholders agreements and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of learning there. And then we actually were just, that took us to the point that we could go into the first initial stages of manufacturing. And then we were just actually received funding at the end of 2021 from BDC, which is Business Development Canada. And this is debt financing. WeBC and Futurepreneur all provided us with financing at the end of the year.
Amazing.
So and that I'm personally, you are personally liable for that as the business owner. So that's another I went, what's the worst case scenario? Worst thing that could happen again.
Sell this apartment. Good thing you live in Vancouver.
And so I did a risk analysis and decided to move forward. And at that point I'd had enough, we'd opened pre-sales in November, and we've had pre-sales through our website. And so again, from people that I don't know, but it's not my network who's necessarily buying it. It's people from cities in the States I don't even recognize. Pre-ordering. We have our email subscriber list is a certain number, and so all along the way there's these little indicators that tell me, okay, keep going, okay, keep going, okay, keep going. The interest is there. My dad is he's an entrepreneur. I grew up surrounded by entrepreneurs. My dad, my stepmom, my mom and my stepdad own a company on the island. And my dad and I had a lot of talks sort of early days, and he's like, okay, you have your off ramps, you have your off ramps all along the way. You've set yourself up in this way. And so you just take it, a day, a week, a month at a time. And then you see the off ramp kind of go by in the distance. And then there's another one if you need it. Right. And so that gave me a lot of comfort, and especially the support of my partner and my friends. And so that's how we've funded thus far. I'm hoping to open up for investment once we have the product, we're delivered, we have a little bit more traction. Hoping to open up to do a larger round, maybe end of next year or early 2020.
I just want to say thank you for being so transparent about that.
We have to be less than 4% of venture capital and funding goes to female
I know, and this is one of
businesses. We have to share this stuff with each other.
And this is the thing that I really, Raquel and I have been speaking about, but I've been like really ruminating on lately. And I have severe imposter syndrome at the best of times. So I'm like, oh no, I couldn't do this. But in my mind, I'm like, why are we not having these conversations? Like, as soon as you said it, I was like, how can I find money to be able to invest? Right? Like, how can other people in this community, in the Bombshells community, be like, okay, and it was the Bougie Budgeter episode that
talked about micro-investing.
And I love that idea. And I think, you know, just anyone out there listening who's like, oh, what do I want to, what are investments and crypto and blah, blah. Like, let's not talk about crypto for a hot second and talk about beautiful pills instead, or things.
You had me and you lost me.
Well, no, I mean, not crypto. I'm saying like, that is like, there's like these what do they call it? These bull markets and these other things. And everything's like rah. And it's like, well, actually, you know what would I love to invest in? You know, they used to call it the power of the pink dollar, but now it's just like the dollar. Like, just make choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give I want to mention a couple of things. One, I want to give a shout out to the forum, for any Canadian female self-identifying female entrepreneurs. The forum used to be the Forum for Women's Entrepreneurs, and they had a money moves course. They just rebranded and they're called the forum now, but they had a money moves course, and I was a part of the first cohort of that. And I think I took that in 2020, and I highly recommend that because they go through all of the various forms of investment and funding and getting financing. And that was really helpful. Like I learned about BDC, Futurepreneur, WeBC through the forums program. It's a great community to be a part of. Yeah. So I'd recommend that course. It was a small investment on my part, and I learned a ton. And it's interesting because I ended up going with like, you know, 3 out of the 5 routes that they talk about. We looked at crowdfunding, like doing a Kickstarter in the beginning. I spent a lot of money testing that with like a Kickstarter agency, and we realized that the cost per acquisition wouldn't work for the people who typically fund Kickstarter campaigns. There's like
it's usually for smaller products, right?
It's a conflict of target. Like, a lot of them are very tech oriented and like follow tech magazines, and so their formula for funding those types of things just wasn't working for Loba. But we looked at that as well.
Right. And sorry, did you say that what was the series that you did? Because I think they've changed the names of them.
It was called Money Moves.
Okay. Cool.
At the time, but I can find it and send it to you.
Yeah, and then we can share it with everyone, and we can all everyone listening can be like, "Okay, let's do this."
Yeah,
it's so important though, because I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's one of those things where people, especially women, they want to hit that next level and they want to go for funding, and no one talks about it. So where do you even, like, Christine and I have talked about this. We're like, where do you even go? We've had other on too where we're like, you know, they've gone through amazing accelerator programs, and we're like, how do you even find these?
Right. And people do find them. Again, I just want to say thank you for being like, just how transparent you are. And I think that that's reflective of in everything. You're so brand consistent. It's like, and my lucky charm. I didn't say this either. Like, we booked this call in, and you're like just a super high vibrating human being. I was like, yeah, auditions, callbacks, acting, blah, blah, blah. And I get my first callback at the exact time that we're meant to be talking.
I was so happy to hear that.
Oh, so I got to book in weekly meetings with you just so that I have my lucky charm, and then so that I can cancel them and go to these callbacks. But the point is, you know, I wanted to move that into because I'd love to direct people towards, if you know, when you have a mentorship program, I want to really highlight and thank you for having such a huge socially conscious arm, which is not an arm. I mean, well, it is an arm. An arm is a part of the body. It's a part of the body of all of the things that you're doing. And I want you to talk about that a little bit, about how you integrated into your daily practice and your daily commitment the various facets of social responsibility that you have in the team.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I'm something else I'm very proud of is our contribution philosophy, which is, I think, what you're referring to.
Yes.
From very early on, like I don't want Loba to just be like a pill organizer company or a company that sells pill organizers. I want it to be about where I'm trying to create something larger than that. And my parents growing up always taught me to leave a place better than you found it. And I have strive to do that all of my life. And whether that's, you know, like a memory comes to mind of when we were camping and them teaching us this lesson, and we left the campsite and they were like, make sure it's better than we left it. And so we made sure that it was like very clean, and we left some extra firewood for the next family who was going to be there. And I just try to apply that in all areas of my life as often as I can. And with Loba, I really wanted to, as we, you know, we're very young and we're a startup, but I wanted to start the building blocks of that concept and giving back from the beginning. So our contribution philosophy, it's posted on our website. It's an evolving philosophy. I hope that as we grow, our contributions will grow as well. But we're focused sort of in 3 areas right now to start. And those reflect sort of my personal values and the values of my team and the people that I surround myself with. But, you know, we believe that when women rise, we all do. Like societally, everyone is better off the closer we are to equality and parity for women and girls. And so I'm committed to mentoring young women in business every year. I've been a part of programs like actually YWIB, Young Women in Business, and mentoring women in their careers and in the path to entrepreneurship if they choose that path. We, you know, obviously believe that sustainability is very important, and it's important for businesses to consider the impact that they're making. So we're working on developing our sustainability plan. My director of creative and contribution, her name is Whitney Larson. She's also one of the co-founders of Ripple of Change and kind of the driving force behind Ripple of Change. She's going to be leading us in developing a sustainability plan for like the 3-year, 5-year, 10-year term. And we're looking at things like how can we, you know, do we want to look at becoming carbon net neutral? And if we do, what are the programs that we should be a part of? Because there's so many different programs you can choose from. So we're doing all that research now. We're committed to giving a portion of profits to the Coalition of Rainforest Nations, which, as I understand it, is one of the nonprofits that has the biggest impact in that area. We, you know, have looked at the materials that we're using, like from early on in the development of Loba and the manufacturing. I was speaking with, you know, past research students at UBC saying like, okay, what's the newest in bioplastics? Like, should we be looking at, there's these plastics made of mushrooms, and like what materials can we make Loba out of? And there's a lot of learning there around how a lot of companies are doing something called greenwashing. Have you heard this term before?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So greenwashing is essentially, it's basically marketing like a more sustainable image than you actually have, or like greenwashing the materials that you're using. And so there were these products that were coming out with like, for example, like, oh, this coffee mug is made of tumbler is made of plastic that's infused with bamboo fiber. And so therefore it's like a greener alternative. And what I learned is the truth is that that's not the case, because these plastics that are mixed with natural materials, they're compromised plastics, so they can't be recycled at the end of life. And then because there's plastic in it and chemicals in it, it can't go in the compost, so it's not compostable. So it's really just sort of like this greenwashed marketed image of something being better for the environment than it actually is. And so I'm really committed to not greenwashing. Again, we looked at all the different materials, and what we found is in what we researched is that the first, you know, the best thing is to create products that are reusable. And so I'm hoping that with Loba, it's made of plastics. It's made of mostly recyclable plastics. The compartments are like a BPA-free food grade plastic that can be recycled at end of life. And then other pieces of the unit are recyclable plastic of a different material. But trying to, you know, have people not use Ziploc bags or like these cheap plastic organizers that can't be recycled properly. And so hopefully reducing single-use solutions or fixes that people have found, and just creating like a really good quality product that will last for a long time and then is recyclable at end of life. We're also, of course, sending Loba in 100% recyclable cardboard boxes. So we're not going like the glossy, like plastic type packaging. It's like a tight fit recyclable cardboard box. And then of course, like recyclable paper. So we're doing what we can based on the research and knowledge that we have.
You're just so thoughtful about it at every step. I think, again, this fills my heart with like congruent joy, where it's like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. There's no dissonance in the story,
Thank
which
you for
is
that.
Well, I mean, it's testament to the amount of heavy lifting that you did at the beginning. Right. And I think that's one thing to really highlight to people, is that it's great. And I love that you're saying it like so casually, that you're like, oh, we do this, we do that, we do that. And people go, oh yeah, I could totally do that. And the reality is you did that from the beginning. And when you build it into your foundation, it is a much more solid, it creates a fortitude of branding that is way more sustainable. Like, all the puns intended, because you're like, you want everything to be a sustainable and yet evolutionary concept, because if we're good at what we do, then we want to evolve past being one thing. You want to keep growing and going.
Exactly. And the reality is, and something that is a challenge, and I'm just being really honest about it, is from a business perspective, like we have to be able to sell a product and have a profit and like revenue off of that product. And as a small companies that's starting up with very limited like funding right now, there's things that we want to do that we just can't. Like people are, our pill organizer would be like thousands of dollars, people just aren't going to buy that. And so it's like, what is within our capability now? But I want to go into the building of this business and the creating of the culture among, hopefully the staff that we hire and the growth that we have, of constantly learning and being curious and evolving. And hopefully one day we can do even like take it even further.
I want to, we're in the same spot. Like Raquel and I are like, we're in iceberg phase, where like there's like a little thing on the top, and underneath we're like, just like trying to build everything. And everyone's like, well, you got this cute little podcast. And we're like, sure. Okay. That's what you're seeing. That's fine. But that normalizing that iceberg in a good way kind of mentality of being like, hey, this is going to be huge, big lifts underneath. It is worth it. And then attaching that value to the end product. I think people are willing to pay a little bit more for that at this stage of society, until the pendulum swings back to a point where it's normal to do that.
And I want to just jump in there and say, when you do those big lifts as your base, what you basically have is you have a really good frame. And then you can base all of your decisions off of that. So that's when we go to values and mission statements and things like that, and you go into branding, like a lot of people think branding is a bit woo-woo. But the reality is it's values. So it's a guidelines. And you can measure everything up against it, because you're one person, but you may run into things over time that become a really difficult decision to make. And that's just allowing you to have that measure to say, okay, does this actually sit well with who we are today, and what we value? And it takes a little bit of a singular human out of that. I would love to know, before we go, a little bit about your branding process. How long did that take you? Because I know for Christine and I, it's two people.
But it's one person, let's be totally honest.
It's not
not helping you. I'm just like, I don't care. You're like, how about this? I'm like, sure, okay. And you're like, that's a stick dude. And I'm like, it's great. Yeah.
Okay, but you think of branding as an image. But when I speak about branding, I'm talking about everything, our values, our mission statement. You are very, very, very deep into that. And we've battled it out on certain things as well, where we've been like, no, this is our value. Well, I don't know, because of this. So, that's something we worked really hard on and still work on refining all the time to make sure it works with what we're trying to build, and that it's sustainable in the long run. That it's not just something for now when we're this big, but it's something that can be sustained and that we can be proud of when it's this big. So tell us about your journey with that.
Totally. And you're just speaking exactly my language. I I do branding for a living with Armature Collective, and I was telling yesterday when we were chatting, I was saying that I'm actually right after this hosting a brand discovery workshop with one of our clients.
Love it.
And so I literally am going into educating and saying all of these things on branding. It's most people think of a logo or colors, or that's the visual identity, but the brand that you develop, like the brand model, is so much bigger than that. And it's very closely connected to your culture, and it should include your purpose and how you promise to work with customers and your community and society as a whole. So I essentially just took the branding process that I learned from throughout my, school, throughout my career, and for Armature Collective, developed our process. And different agencies and different people have different ways of going about that. And I applied that to Loba from day one. So it's definitely, it's funny. My team, it's harder doing it for yourself.
It's so
than
hard
for
doing
clients.
it for yourself.
And I totally empathize with them when it's like, but at the end of the day, the brand model that you create, it's not just like subjective. You don't sort of evaluating things based on just like subjective likes. You go back to your brand model and you say, okay, if our brand attributes or our brand values are X, Y, Z, like say you want to be sophisticated, for example, and you evaluate it when you're doing a new product line, when you're doing a design, when you're looking at your website, when you're looking at, the type of individual to hire, the type of company to partner with, or what other, like markets you're going to go into. You look back at your brand model and you're like, does it align with our purpose? Would this be described as how we want to be described as, and use it as like a tool for evaluation? You're so right. You're speaking exactly my language around branding. But it's harder to do it for yourself. I found I
feel like it would be impossible because you're too close to it, right?
My team is really good. My team, like Whitney, and then one of the graphic designers, art directors I work with, Tiana, they're like, okay, Kate, you're getting, hung up on this. You're getting caught up on this. You got to let it go. And I'm like, okay, yeah, right. But it was such a pleasure to create the brand and to create a brand for myself in an area that I'm so passionate about and that I hope, other people will love.
So you do these branding workshops often?
We can absolutely have a discussion about us helping you.
Let's have a talk
defining and articulating your brand model. Yes.
Well, I mean, I also think like so many of the people listening and watching, so many of them are thinking about, when do I take this leap? How do I've got this product, or I've got this service, or I've got something that I'm really feeling I'm ready to take to that next level, whatever that is. And I always say I'm big on resumes. So I'm like your individual like blueprint of who you are is really important to me. Yeah. And I just nerd out on resumes so hard. But it's super specific. And I think branding to me is the same way, where it's like you have to start with that as your foundation, so you know exactly who you are, what you can do, why you are doing it, and then what you want, where you want to go for, before you start trying to pitch people on this product that it might be amazing, but you're not as powerful in presenting it as you 100% could be if someone helps you to build that framework, someone outside of you,
or even building it. Because if you start building it before you know what your core values are within that company, it's very easy to start making the wrong decisions, to cut corners on things that are against your values. And I think a lot of companies, the mistake they make is they think the values are just something they paste on the wall. It's a big poster that they put up and then they don't look at it again. Or maybe it's something that they use in HR to see if one candidate is better than the other for the company, but they don't actually necessarily always use it for the tool that it really can be. And I think if you do use it as the tool that it can be, then it can really guide you to run your company in a way that is super aligned and that there is no dissonance like you are. It's why when we're talking to you, there's no gaps. It's because it's very easy to see that you're very values driven, that you've done the homework.
You've done the work. Yeah, you've done the homework.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, but and anyone who's thinking about entrepreneurship or starting their own company or creating a product, you also have to be willing to make mistakes. And I could give you a list of all the mistakes I've made so far, and learn from them and grow from them and stay open and curious. And I just want to continue learning and building Loba to be, the kind of company that makes people feel like they're part of something bigger.
Yeah, I'm in. Yes.
We'd love to have you.
She'll be on the commercials.
I mean, yeah. Shop Loba.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll need models for like the photography we're going to do.
The Zen person with like, yes, the little sage diffusers going, and you just see her coming out of the fog, like lifting her.
I see it already. We'll storyboard it up.
Love it. Just don't watch any of our reels in the past of us advertising, because we're like, what is this? How does this thing? Yes, shop local. It's great. People love it. Yeah. Kate, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening, illuminating, pun intended, for these beautiful glowing Loba boxes. I'm gonna just think of like endless puns for this now.
Please send them to me. We'll use them in our materials.
100%.
Thank you both. This has been just such a pleasure.
It's so much fun, and I look forward to continuing the conversation, and for all of you listening and watching, like follow Shop Loba. Follow Kate, I'll put all of the resources in our guides, but I think if you know anyone who is on that health journey and looking for a way to not disrupt their beautiful,
not look like a grandpa with 60 bottles of vitamins. I used to always get made fun of for that.
Oh man,
not with Loba.
I just stopped taking them. I just was like, not gonna do it. But now you can be healthy. Good job. Be healthy. Thank you, Kate. You've been amazing.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening, bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.